probably a few other places that we're going to make all our videos available. We are working on a section on our website at some point that you'll be able to reference everything we went through. So a lot of topics on deck. We just got to get to them. I think that's it for one side. Let's get the other one on. That's pretty much it for the side stiffener, and then we have a rear stiffener that also keys in here. These let's see what size those we're using. There's two there, so that should be, yep. Page one done, other than mounting maybe the steering posts, and those are 3mm screws, flatheads. Yep. And they want you mounting those in the forward position to start. There are two mounting hole positions for the steering pivots. I'm assuming at this point that's to be able to change the Ackerman. Front end, always a good option. You should be putting thread lock on these. I'm probably going to do it later. These are easy enough to get back out and tweak things, especially steering geometry. If we'll probably go over some of that when we get everything built. There, now page one's done. And the next page is going into the diffs. Again, I don't know if I want to do those right now. I don't think we're gonna. They're easy enough to put in. I don't think we're gonna do that. At least not today. So we'll jump on to page 6 actually in the manual, and it's the slipper clutch assembly. Squeaky chair today apparently. Now the kit comes stock with the slipper setup, so it's going to have slipper pads as usual, a hex keyed spur gear, center shaft, spring, and the adjuster nut assembly. And being a lightweight kit, this is still a steel shaft for the center piece for your slipper setup. There's not a lot of weight there, but probably something we can look at later. Nice hard anodized slipper pad, slipper plates I should say. This is the first time for me building one of these, and actually first time a four-wheel drive car in probably 10-15 years, so if I get stuck on something we'll probably skip it, and we'll come back to it in the next video. Slipper pads out here. Alright, so everything's out. So this is going to be the main guy. He pretty much locates and starts everything. We just got to make sure we're getting the right pins and things in the right spots. So the short pin goes on the end. So there's 3 pins for your that go through the shaft and hold the plates and various things. So this little guy is going to be pretty important at the end. These 2 are for your slipper plates. It goes through the shaft like that, and then you got to be careful because there's no back notching on this to hold the pin in, so the pin pops through the other side. And then get the old slipper pad. I'll probably take this slipper assembly back apart once we get it all together, because I guess I always like to grind down the tooth number on the spur because it is protruding out from the slipper surface. I don't know if you can see it, but it's on there, and it makes a high spot on your slipper pad, and then your slipper will start chattering. So not the best, but I have let PR know about that we'd like to see something a little different. So it keys in just like any other slipper assembly. There we go. This side, this will be the fun side from what I've gathered. So another slipper pad over here. And this guy goes in this way, but there's no hole yet. And that's the good part. And not so good part about this, putting it together, the pin likes to come out of the other side if you let it slip at all. So there's our other, so there's 2 holes in the shaft. We have to get to this guy to put our pin in. So I guess we can do that before we slide the plate over. I'll just try to keep the plate from moving away from the pin this time so we don't lose it. So I'm going to just take this back apart. Reassemble it all again. I know if Chad's watching this, he's probably laughing at me right now. Okay, so we got that back. Slip this back down. Then we have to get the pad back in the hex without the pin coming out again. There, okay, so our pin's over here, so it's barely sticking out. So now when we put the pin in first, I got fuzz all over. And we put on slipper pad, or vice versa. Yeah, it fits fine. So the pin's still sticking out there. Now we get the plate slide down there. Oh, probably help if I put it on the right way. You always want the bevel out and the big area on the slipper. This guy goes on here. That. And spring. This guy is a threaded cup, which is strange. Seems like you would want that at least with two flats on it so you could grab a hold of it. I'm not sure why it's round. Let's see if we can get this started without tearing my fingers up. So that's basically going to be how you adjust the slipper. And they do give you a measurement. It's from 1 to 1.5 millimeters to start with. I think we might take that off and make an adjustment before we go too far during the week here. Should be a set screw, and there's a flat on the shaft in the threaded part. Now we just got to get back to that. But I think we have to thread it on a little farther yet. So I think we're far enough to where we need to be. There should be a gap between this guy and the adjuster, like a 1 and 1.5 millimeters, so we're a ways away yet. I'll bust out the big pliers. So easy enough, big pliers with a towel. You can grab onto the round portion without marring it up too bad, maybe just a little spot there, and get your gap that they're looking for. Yep. So we'll put our little short pin in. So I'll show you guys here. And then the end goes on like that, and there should be a 1 to 1.5 millimeter gap in between those guys right there for the baseline setup. You may need to loosen that up or tighten it up depending on track conditions for the most part. So now we got to find a flat on the there it is, on the shaft to put our set screw in. So you may need your pliers again. Case we have to back it off a little, I think. Luckily, when you get most of the way on there, the slipper grips enough you can just grab the spur gear and turn it back a little bit at a time. Alright, now we got the flat lined up with the hole for the set screw right here. And we'll see if this is the right set screw. If I can get the, there we go. Might be too big. Yep, it's this other one. There's another set screw in here. Didn't know which one to use, and I don't have the right wrench with me. I don't think. Yeah, we do. This guy goes right in here. And of course, you'd want to set this with some thread lock. Even though they don't tell you to use it there, I would at least Try some blue if you run on fairly smooth track, red thread lock if you're running on rougher stuff, and make sure you don't get it on the threads of the main shaft and the adjuster collar. You definitely don't want that locking up. Only on the threads of the set screw. And then if you do get it locked up, you can heat it up with a torch or a lighter, and then just don't burn yourself, and it should come right off. So we're just going to hand tighten that for now. So I'm sure I'll take it apart at some point. So get our pin back on before we run it or sell it, one or the other. So then in the end is where one of these other screws go. I think it's this guy that's laying out here. Flathead. Yep, it's got a flathead base in it. If I can find the right wrench. It's probably laying right in front of me. So this threads the end on. This is another place where a little thread lock, probably blue for this one, would help you out and keep that locked on there without going crazy. Yep. So I can't slip the slipper by hand out of the car. Probably a good start. We'll see when we get it all in with tires on it. That looks like it for the slipper. There's some bearings that go on the ends. We'll get those on when we go to put them in the bulkhead for it. Next page. Want us to throw the diff stuff together? We can do that. At least the diff housings. We can put the pinion gears in. Now, there are several motor, servo, and battery layouts for this car. We run on primarily dry tracks here in Michigan, so we're going to be biasing our weight towards the rear, and there's also a setup for placement of the shocks, so we're going to actually run those on the back side as well, at least to start with. So let's see, what am I going to need here? There's our setup there. So I need to get some of our diff parts out, mainly our pinion we need. Again, part of the lightweight options or features of this kit are the lightened ring gear, just on the back side. The input shafts, the pinion gears for the diffs. Not too bad. They do put a nice counter bore in there for you. So we need those. We don't need the ring gears right now. We got our diff housings here. They make it easy. Like most every other buggy, you can just pull the back off and pull the diffs out and service, do whatever service you need to do. I gotta find the right bearings here. It's like 5x10x4s, front and rear. It's probably these guys. Our outdrives can go in too, or maybe. We know where those are going, so put those with the ring gears. These require some shims, so depending on how tight you need to run it or how tight it is putting it all together, you'll need to adjust the little shims for these guys. Otherwise you're going to get really odd gear wear. So they're saying 2 to start, but you could put 3 washers in if it's still pretty loose. And really we're just trying to minimize the backlash of the gear set. You don't want it so tight that it binds up all the drivetrain and burns up a motor or makes you slow. So that pops right in there just like that. And then you get another guy, put it in the front. It's good to go there. Try 2 more in the front. Now, some guys do like to run them a little tight to begin with and let them break in. I'm not necessarily like that. I'd rather have it work right out of the box and then adjust it later if I need to. Preparation is the key for a lot of things in racing, so if you can get it right out of the box, then you'll have a lot less problems at the track. So, and at least know where your stuff's at when you're setting it up. Okay, now we need the out drives for the center drive shafts. I'll put those down here. Probably in this bag over here. These are the rear out drives, bearings, hardware, mount. Got a few bags laying all over already. You're probably going to do that. A few times. I bet I covered them up with the manual. There's the center drives there. We'll find them. They are around somewhere. Those are the fronts. Right here in the center drive bag. So here's all the different drives they give you as well for the center for the different setups. So it comes with 4 different bones. 4 different bones. You got 3 aluminum ones, 1 steel one, depending on your configuration you're going to run. Let's see what ours is going to call for here. I have to go looking around. So we're not going to script any of our videos, guys, so it's probably going to be a little boring in some spots and waiting for me to figure it out. But at least if you're watching, you won't have to figure it out when you're doing it. So we're going to be running the motor towards the rear on the left, looks like, and the battery pack on the right. And then looks like maybe servo on the left, radio gear on the right. So that's the plan. Now we just got to find out what length drives go in that configuration. Again, Chad's probably chuckling because he's already figured this stuff out. Shorty battery pack. Looks like we need the 59 millimeter long front drive, so the steel front one for our configuration. Yes. And then the rear is going to be, looks like we got a, rear's going to be the 89, so the long guy. Put these guys over here. So their center drives are set up basically like CVDs. You have your cups, and you got the bone with the barrel, and then the pin pivot, and then they also have the retaining rings to hold your pins in. Looks like they're just running with those, no set screws. I do like to put a little bit of grease in here, either white lithium or a black molybdenum grease. The aluminum is hard anodized, so it's pretty tough, but you're probably still going to find it. You're going to wear some things, whether you want to or not, in a four-wheeler. Alright. So again, we'll probably go back and lube these up with whatever lube I have available that works. So they go together just like any CVD. Like that quick. And then they got the little retaining rings that pop over. Probably not the best thing to do this right now, but we're going to. There, so that holds the pin in. Now you can flip it around and the pin won't fly out on you. Do the same thing on the rear, or the front, my bad. Drops right out, so you gotta kind of hang on to it and have it the right angle. Here's the first one, pop right in. This one's giving me a little fit. Pin while we're pushing the retainer over. There we go. Center drive's pretty well done. Just there's a big old set screw in these. This is going to be one of those spots where red Loctite is definitely a must. Definitely. Because you probably will lose one at some point. Guy, and then the big old 4mm looks like. There. So there's pretty much how it all goes together, and then it lets you just put the diff in any way that you need to do it. There is a specific way and direction that the diffs go in, front to rear, so you just got to pay attention to that. Otherwise, you might find yourself going nowhere when you get it on the track, or when you try and spin it over, either way. Now you should probably preload these a little bit, not a ton, just enough to snug it up when you tighten it up. Because this basically controls the depth that the pinion's allowed to move. So if you don't control where this guy's at, locked onto this shaft, then the pinion will be able to move back and forth and cause all kinds of stuff going on in the gearbox. So keep an eye on that for sure. Like I said, you don't have to push on it. Just make sure it's snug. Push on the inside gear, push it out so it's all the way out, and then just put your finger on the gear like that and hold it while you set screw it down. You don't want to bind the bearings up, just enough to take out all the backlash or the play there. Turns nice and free. It doesn't chuck back and forth. That's what you're looking for. And that's going to be our rear. This is going to be the front. So now they got us putting shock towers on. I said the other day, nice carbon 4mm shock towers. The ones on the buggies have held up great. I've piled it in upside down on the front shock tower and haven't broken it or delammed it yet. I say yet because it probably will happen with me driving it. But nice pieces either way. And this is the front. So these are going to mount above on the 4 holes on top so that you can still get this cover on and off with your flip over the right way. So when your diffs all together, it's like that. You still got your holes up here. You just got to pop it over the holes. You're good to go there. So let's see, 3x8s. Sure, get the right lengths. There we go. The manual does have charts showing you the lengths of all the screws on that page, and they are actual size, so you can just hold it up to that and make sure you get the right screw for the right location. We're hunting down all the ones we're going to need here. Probably a good idea to just put the front cap on this and use it to locate your screws for your shock tower. Might even just get it going before you run them in. This stuff I don't like to tighten all the way down until I have them all in, and then I put the final tightening on all 4, not one right down and make it tight, and then the rest of them go in oddly. It's kind of hard sometimes. I will say I've put together one of the PR S1 laydown buggies and recorded it on video. I just lost some of the video when I moved to PC, so I'll probably put that up on YouTube at some point. As much as I got, it wasn't too bad. It was using I think a different camera than this one. Still looks pretty good, so I'm just running my mouth the whole time. So there's the front shock tower. Cap still comes off. And then our rear shock tower, we're going to do the same kind of thing, looks like. This guy pops on, yep, sort of keyed in the same way. But we're using, yep, 3x8s again. Make sure you got the right ones. Switch over to the driver. I know my hands will be killing me tomorrow if I do all these by hand. If you guys are commenting, I can't see the comments. I don't have that window up right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, you probably won't be able to comment anyway, or at least you can, but I won't be able to read them until we go and check. I think we got them all. So there's the rear. Sure we're getting everything else. That's it for the rear sections. Now we'll start mounting some stuff and putting the steering together, looks like. So front gearbox. On the front. Now the front, they have a few different options. It does key in into the chassis. There's going to be a couple options for I guess we're going to call it anti-squat of the front end. Just like you have in the rear end, they do the same kind of thing in the front. Move some of these pieces out of the way. And you will have extra screws out of each bag that are used elsewhere. Don't know why they're all in one bag and not in the bag they're going to be used out of, but it's the way the two-wheel drive was as well. So we got to hunt down our front hanger here. Front. And that's what the letters on these blocks mean. This is a front block. The one for the rear, the front will be front rear, so FR. It's going to key over the chassis in the front. Going that way. So we'll grab the rear first and put that on. Yep, there it is. So front rear. And these screws are probably going to be used in that. They're 3x6s. I think we got any in this one. No 3x6s in the A bag, so we're going to have to get them out of another bag. Probably bag B. Indeed. So we dump everything out of that bag. Find our 3x6 flatheads. Probably going to be these little guys. Yep. These will probably be guys that will loosen up over time if you don't put some thread lock on. If I'm making adjustments, I don't want thread lock in there. At least not at first. But if you tighten them up a few times in between your first practice runs, they will stay. But if you find you're not adjusting on them very much after that, then I would probably Loctite them just to make sure. That way you don't have to check them all the time. Well, these thread in pretty quick, so we'll just hand tighten these like we normally would. Anywhere where there's steel threading into aluminum, you're going to have the screws loosen on vibration. So anytime you run, you're going to have to check those, like I said, unless you thread lock them right out of the gate. So the rear hanger's on. Now we can put the front diff in, or diff housing, I should say. So again, these key in. There's a little key right here in the bottom that keys into this hole here. Helps you locate it. And then those are going to be 3x10s and 3x14s with a couple more. Looks like 2.6 for the outside guys. There they are. 3x10s. These are all flatheads for the bottom of the front chassis portion. Find our 10s here. There. 3x14s. So it's going to be these guys. Yep. So I think all these are 2mm heads. Yep. Figure out where these go. Looks like the 2.6s are going on the very outside in the middle of the case, which holds the top of the case on. So those don't go in right away. So your 3mm screws are going to go in first. We're going to put the 3x10s in the back first. Oops. So you guys can see it. everything's fairly flat and lined up before putting these in. I like putting these in fairly slow. I don't like ripping them in there unless I'm building a lot of stuff for myself. Otherwise it builds a lot of heat, and you could strip these very easily out of the case. Looks like our long guys are going to go through up here into the case as well, but we don't have the case top or the diff ready to go for the case screws yet, so put those over there with the cases. So there's the front setup. Your diff goes in, case goes on. Pretty easy there. Now we got, looks like, some suspension pieces. See what all comes out of bag B for that. Fronts. Like I said the other day, I went through all the parts in the suspension pieces and pre-trimmed them, so I cut them out of the tree and then cleaned up all the runners and the pieces that are left over from that. Okay, so looks like I'll start with this piece and some bearings. We need 5x13s and 5x10x4. Those probably aren't it. No, maybe they are. Nope, these are it here. So they're doing the same thing most everybody else is. They're really putting heavier ball bearings in the outside where the main load is being taken up on the hubs. And then they're running smaller ones on the inside, rubber sealed bearings out of the kit. I usually like to wipe the outside grease off just to keep them from picking up dirt right away. They will squeeze some of the grease out because they do come packed pretty tight. So you may want to clean them out with some brake cleaner after a while. I think these are marked left and right. If not, yeah, there's left. This one's right. And the caster blocks are also marked right and left. And they also have the degree of caster built in, molded into them. See it there, makes it easy just to grab the part you need. So let's do the left. I think I had those flipped around. I did. So we'll do the left first. These. They have their spacers going the other way. Hopefully there's no issues like we've seen on one of the two-wheel drive kits recently, but I didn't have the problem on mine, so it may be just an isolated thing. So they're calling for a small 1mm spacer on the bottom going into this guy here. thicker one, so it has a thicker thickness here. Looks like it goes on top, maybe. Yeah, they don't have a they don't call that out. Well, there it is, 2.2 millimeters looks like. You just got a runner going all over the place. So this has got a cup in it on the top. I'm not sure what that's going to be for other than minimizing some friction. I'm looking for one more. There it is. Okay. So then this guy pops in there. And we're going to need 3x12. Not too many different ones in there. There's that. So that goes through that plastic bushing. Imagine a brass bushing or something a little more metal would be a little less friction, but the plastics we have are pretty good nowadays too. So this is a pretty important part with your front end. If you get these going in crooked, they're going to be binding up your suspension and your steering and everything. So it's pretty important to find it and be straight the first time. I guess the block was a little out of whack there. Find another 12. Goes in the bottom. Try to put these in by hand, at least start them, get them straight. Started. It's out farther towards the edge. Yeah, probably. Okay. Eventually find it. Otherwise we're going to take it apart and figure out what's going on. I'll do that. Alright, well we'll pre-thread the hole in the top, probably a good idea. Of course it's not helping that it was kind of stuck in the plastic on top for some reason. Interesting. Well, that'll be something we're going to have to look at. So we're going to pre-thread this a little bit. You don't have to grab it very much to get that out of there. So what was going on is this piece should slip down in here, but I think this is actually a metal piece, and it was jamming up on the end. It won't let me go through that way. I'll grab a different screw maybe, or there's a burr probably. It's usually what it is. It is metal, so looks like we got it through that time. Just not all the way, so. Enough to use now. So these are kind of important to make sure you're going the right way. You could put the left one on the right and the right one on the left upside down, and then your steering geometry is going to be way off. So just keep an eye on that. Guy, we'll try this again. Make sure your camber mounts are on top. And now he's going to play ball. Yeah, I thought so. Pretty tough material. It does have a little bit of chuck in it yet, but we do I think carry the 5mm diameter ID shims that you can tighten that up if you want. We'll probably leave it for now. Make sure everything's hand tight. Took a little bit out of it. It's still got a little bit, but that's probably not too bad. Probably. And then we're going to pre-thread this guy this time. And of course now I'm want to switch the wrench. Seems like it goes on straighter with the driver. We'll flip it over and do the other side. No chamfer on the bottom, so probably go a few more minutes. We'll finish this up. I'll probably throw a couple A-arms together, and then we'll probably call it a part one. So I guess the key on these is there's an R and an L right here, so just make sure that they're right. You're reading them the right way. the same problem on this side. Yeah, it looks like that bushing is going to cause us grief on the top side here again. It's just wanting to spin. So we're going to have to grab it with the pliers. Can't just run it in on here either, or else it's going to stay there for a little bit. There we go. So it's just a little burr at the end of that bushing, and they are metal. Surprises me, but hey, that's what I was looking for anyway. Try this again, see if we can get it to go now. Yep. Alright, so we got both our caster blocks and steering blocks put together. Let's see what else we got here. We can do some CVDs real quick, front drives. Those are probably easy to do, just like we saw for the centers. Get everything out of the way here. Let's see, for the front, 75s for the front, 74.5s for the rear. And they come with the front drives too, looks like. Front should be a shorter drive, so just a sec, guys. Make sure we got the right ones for the rear. The rears are 68 for this one. Option parts are 68 in the rear. The rears are going to be 64.2. Or they just apparently round down and call them 64s. Got it. So the front they have in the manual 75 for the dog bone or the drive bone, CVD bone, but on the bone itself it's calling out 74.5, so they're basically rounding up for their measurement. Not sure why, it kind of makes a little confusion there, but is what it is, I guess. Still good parts. We're setting these up the same exact way. Drop in the barrel. All the holes in the cup are the same distance away from the end, so it won't change your plunge by changing different holes in here. So if you wear out a set here, you can switch to the other one and be back to new pretty much. rings may go on easier one way or another, but I think it's just a matter of spreading it out and getting over the lip. So there you go, another one down. Why we didn't do this years ago, I don't know. Makes things so much easier for CVDs. You don't lose parts. Not trying to hunt down a whole rebuild kit just for the pin or the pin in the barrel. And it still goes in. And the gap, once you get the retaining ring on there, the gap isn't wide enough to let the pin out. So even if it rotates over to one of the pins, not going to come out. One of the pin ends, I should say. So no spacers, they just go right in the back. And then the front side's going to have an aluminum hex, which I think are the silver ones. Should be 4.2 millimeters wide. I don't have my calipers here, so we can't check those, but I don't think I've dug far enough to find the rears yet. So sometimes, yep, there's a spacer, a shim that goes out here, just to shim your hex away from your bearing a little bit. And if you're in a rush, try to find a spacer or a shim that doesn't go too much past the inner race of your bearing. Otherwise, you're going to tear up the inner race of your bearing and just cause all kinds of bad stuff to happen when you're trying to race. So keep an eye on that. And these are clamping hexes, so right out of the box. We need a pin. I gotta find pins. Rear hubs are wider, so those look to be 5 something. They're black. Pins came in that. Right there here. We'll open up the rears and get some other pins. I think these are probably too long though. Probably too short, actually. So they're most likely in another bag. Now, if you do run into a situation where you're missing parts, you can contact PR directly and see if you can get some from them. Not sure what the policy is yet. If they do send you something, it'll probably be a couple days to get it at least. Maybe a little faster. Oh, there we go. Hiding in another bag of suspension pins. Your guess is as good as mine. Why they didn't come in the CVD kit, or the drive kit. If we can get them in there. Hopefully these are the right ones. Yep. Here's the one we did. Usually just pops on there if these are the right pins, and they are. Again, you want to do the same thing here. You want to kind of pull or push on the back side a little bit just to get all the play out, and then tighten it down on your hex on the axle, and then maybe even put your thumb on that side and tighten it up a little bit. You only want to just do it enough to have it clamp down. You don't want it smashing the hex down and creating problems that way. So with this, there is a little bit of chuck, but you don't want it too tight. Same reason as the gear on your diffs. Like I said, there are different thicknesses of these little shims, so you can get different ones of these and tighten it up more or less. Just depends on what you want to do with it. Now the bearings may seat a little bit after you run the car a little bit, so you know, beating around on the track a couple laps, you might see that play is a little bit more than what it was. Same thing, clamp it down, not too tight, but not too loose. That was probably a little too much because you got your gap here where the clamp is, and it's pretty tight. So just be careful of that. So that finishes up the sub-assemblies for the steering, at least out on the A-arm end. So then they got us putting together the sway bar link before we even put the A-arm on, because obviously the sway bar mount is located in the A-arm, hiding in there, so that'll be fun. I think that's probably where we're going to leave it for the first one. Got some good practice in at making sure you guys can see everything, hopefully. So far so good. Again, you guys can see it. The quality's there for sure. There are a few design things that could be probably better, I think, the slipper being one of them. But so far so good. I know the A-arms are probably going to drop right together once we get everything done. I know from previous experience the turnbuckles go together really smooth. That's really about it for now. I think hopefully you guys are checking it out and enjoying it for one. Hopefully we'll have part 2 maybe next weekend. So thanks for stopping in and hanging out if you've stayed this long. Otherwise, you can check it out when they get it all processed and posted as a recording. So thanks again, guys. We'll see you next week.